encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network.
From the book club today, my name is Brad McNutt, and I'm the host of this podcast dedicated to reviewing and recommending many helpful books about the heavenly book that God has given to us. And we are so happy and thankful to be back after a 2-year hiatus, spending time, hopefully reading and doing a lot of things and growing, and excited to share about a lot of the books that we have been reading and want to talk to you about, and just glad to be back talking about books. I always love them, and I'm always grateful to be able to discuss them with any and everyone. Of course, the podcast now is available not only in audio, but also in video. You can find us on YouTube, the Light Network YouTube channel, and of course, we'll be there. And we are now in the second phase of our cycle, which, as you remember, we're looking at a classic, a book that's been around for a number of years, that has been able not only to have longevity, but also to have great productivity. And there are some books I think we could classify, rightly so, as instant classics. In my mind, one of those books that happens to be on my desk in my podcasting studio right now is Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. I think it is only a few years old, but it was an instant classic. The amount of good that will be done with that book is hard to fathom. And so I would consider it to be an instant classic. Now, as we think about classics, as we try and characterize them, we're again looking at about 20 years and has been able to make a significant impact in the lives of people. And so the book we want to think about today is entitled Under the Unpredictable Plant, An Exploration in Vocational Holiness by Eugene Peterson. It was originally published in 1992, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm kind of holding the book up for you to see. It's not a very big book. I don't even know if it's 200 pages. Nope, just shy of 200. 197 to be exact. And so as we think about this book, let's do it the way that we always try and think about these books. First of all, beginning with the person. Eugene Peterson is a person that even if you have not heard of his name, you've probably come across his works, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. He was educated. He received a BA in philosophy from Seattle Pacific University, an MA in Sacred Theology at New York Theological Seminary, and an MA in Semitic Languages at Johns Hopkins University. For 29 years, he served, and I believe he was the church planter and founder of Christ Our King Presbyterian Church in Bel Air, Maryland. If not, he was certainly long tenured there at 29 years. He has written a slew of books. Of course, he passed away a number of years ago, but he wrote a slew of books before he passed. And probably the work that is most commonly associated with him, and of which you would be familiar even if you didn't know his name, is the translation of The Message. And the Message has received some unfair treatment, not understanding the scope of what Mr. Peterson was trying to do with that particular translation. But all in all, most people are going to at least be somewhat familiar with it. You've seen it in your Bible app on your phone or on your computer or on your iPad or whatever it may be. And so that's Eugene Peterson. Now, when Eugene Peterson does these things, when he writes, when he preaches, when he preached and when he wrote, of course, he is now deceased, and it has the feel of sitting down with an older and a gentle spiritual father. He's offering tremendous advice, not pounding you over the head, but offering tremendous advice and really penetrating insights and questions that cause you to really stop and think. Now, this book, Under the Unpredictable Plant, and the subtitle, An Exploration in Vocational Holiness, it was written based on the book of Jonah. And of course, when you look at Jonah and God calls him to go to Nineveh, he is less than thrilled with the assignment, to say the least. And so in this book that Peterson has written, he anchors it in Jonah and that encounter, and helps us to understand the things and the challenges that go with long-term ministry in local churches. And so when we come to the parts of the book, you can just basically see the progression of the story. And people say, well, that doesn't sound so compelling when you just look at the chapter or the section headings. But the way that he uses them and crafts them, that's where it really takes off. And so the parts of the book are buying passage to Tarshish, escaping the storm, in the belly of the fish, finding the road to Nineveh, and quarreling with God under the unpredictable plant. And in each of those, he will flesh them out and help you to see the applications. Now, as we move on, number 3, to the perils of the book, we always want to read anything that we do read with a discerning eye. We don't want to just walk in blindly and just believe everything just because somebody wrote it on a piece of paper. And so as we think about that, and honestly, I think any author worth his or her salt would want you to read the same way. They would want you to read even what they had written with a discerning eye. Now, I usually mark things when I mark up books like crazy when I'm reading them, just reactions, thoughts. And one of the things I mark, or I'll put question marks if I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to say, or if I don't feel like maybe they have connected the dots, like maybe it's true, but I don't think you've shown enough evidence to make that connection as strongly as you're making it. Or if there are disagreements, here are some things and here are some reasons maybe why I would see it differently. But in this book, I mean, you're going to have some differences probably in how you have traditionally read Jonah with the way that he reads it. Sometimes Peterson can be a little too mystical for others. I haven't read all of his books, so I'm certainly not a Peterson expert, but they're not too mystical in my mind. He, of course, was Presbyterian, and so some of his language with the role of pastor and parishes and things along those lines may be a little unfamiliar to us. And so those are some things you might see. But all in all, this is a book you can really read with a discerning eye, but you don't have to really push at it. If you can see the central message of what is being communicated, it will be a tremendous blessing in the process. And so as we think about that, then let's move to the peaks of the book, why we believe it to be worthy of recommendation. And there are a number of passages I want to read to you, and some of them are a little extended. And that extension comes from, and I'm kind of mashing things together, certain things from certain paragraphs, from certain pages, but overall in the flow of thought, just to kind of give you the flavor of what is being said. There's certainly more to it. And so as we think about this, we want to talk about fleeing the presence of the Lord. On pages 11 through 13, this is what Peterson has to say. He says, presence in Hebrew is literally face, a metaphor charged with complex and intimate experience. In infancy, our eyes gradually focus. The face becomes our first vista. By means of the parental face, we know ourselves as ourselves, and in its expressions, learn our place in the world. In the face, we acquire trust, affection, or in some terrible cases, rejection and abuse. Our formative years are spent looking up into the face, and we grow up toward what we are looking up to. Thus, the metaphor pours out insights rooted in experience. The face is our source and our sun under which we realize ourselves as intimately conceived and beneficently illuminated. These experienced facts of face develop into the metaphor of God's face. The feelings and responses that begin in the cradle develop in adulthood under the influence of the faith into acts of worship. Deliberate ventures into God adoration and Christ commitment by which we escape the narcissistic isolation of gazing into our own ego mirrors and having reality defined by the squint of our eyes, the set of our jaws. Why would anyone flee the presence of the face of God, presence/face of God, to look at that? And so he's basing it on our formation as a child. Of course, parents' faces are the first thing that we see, and in that we learn who they are, but we also learn who we are. And what he's saying is, as we behold God, we're able to do that. Similar to what Paul is saying, I think, in 2 Corinthians 3, that we, with an unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being changed or transformed from one degree of glory to another. And so in that process, he says, why would we not want to look upon the face of God? Why would we flee from the presence of God as Jonah did? Well, he's going to offer some insight. As unreasonable as it seems, there is a reason, and it is this. A curious thing happens to us when we get a taste of God. It happened first in Eden, and it keeps happening. The experience of God, the ecstasy and the wholeness of it is accompanied by a temptation to reproduce the experience as God. The taste for God is debased into a greed to be God. Being loved by God is twisted into a lust to God performance. I get a glimpse of a world in which God is in charge and think maybe I have a chance at it. I abandon the personal presence of God and take up with the depersonalized and canny serpent. I flee the shining face of God for a slithery world and religion that gives me license to manipulate people and acquire God-like attributes to myself. The moment I begin cultivating the possibility of acquiring that kind of power and glory for myself, I most certainly will want to blot out the face, flee from the presence of the Lord, and seek a place where I can develop pride and acquire power. And unfortunately, in ministry, you know this to be true. Some people set themselves up to be God. They have fled from the face of the Lord. They no longer live their lives under that face. Now, externally, things may appear to be great, but inside the individual's heart, if we were to peer into it, we could see that it's been a long time since they've sat really in the presence of God. And so we want to create our own kingdoms, as Paul Tripp would say in his book, A Dangerous Calling. And so then as we move on to pages 20 and 22, he talks to us about seeking ministry fame. And so he says this, I do insist, though, that the congregation is not a job site to be abandoned when a better offer comes along. It's not a corporate ladder. The congregation is the pastor's place for developing vocational holiness. It goes without saying that in the place of ministry, it is the place of ministry. We preach the word and administer the sacraments. We give pastoral care and administer the community life. We teach and we give spiritual direction, but it's also the place in which we develop virtue, learn to love, advance in hope, become what we preach. At the same time, we proclaim a holy gospel, we develop a holy life. We dare not separate what we do from who we are. St. Paul substantiates this necessary congruence between election as saints and vocations as ministers when he places the work of ministry alongside the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. The congregation provides the rhythms, the associations, the tasks, the limitations, the temptations, the conditions for this growing up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ. These conditions are perhaps neither more nor less favorable to the life of faith in Jesus than those of the farmer, the teacher, the engineer, the artist, the clerk, but they are ours. We must be mindful of the conditions. And so not viewing it as a ladder, but appreciating the local church as a place to help us grow. Many times when we walk into ministry situations, those who step into those situations come with it thinking, I'm the answer guy. It's like a business. I got to turn this place around, or I got to keep it going, or make it more profitable. Instead of realizing you're entering into a family, an environment that yes, you're hoping to be a blessing to, but you need them. You need them to bless your life. You need them to teach you things that you don't know, and to help you and to form you and mold you. And that's what he's talking about here. Important reminder. Now, later on in the book, page 127, he talks about how his visits were affected. And I really, really love this perspective. He says, since my Joycean conversion, this is talking about previous conversations and things, I no longer consider my visits at these times as the duties of pastoral care, but as occasions for original research on the stories being shaped in their lives by the living Christ. I go to these appointments with the same diligence and curiosity that I bring to a page of Isaiah's oracles, or a tangled argument in St. Paul. That is, when he goes to visit, he goes there to learn what God has done in the life of that person, to see how God is working in the life of that person, how he's transforming that particular individual. And when you go and make those visits and don't view it as it's some kind of a thing where this is my job and I got to show up and I don't want people to complain, and instead really invest in the individual and look at it as an opportunity, as many preachers throughout the ages have said, that it is an opportunity to get a front row seat to what God is doing in the lives of people. And so when you make visits and you go in looking for those things, instead of dreading them, thinking, when is it going to be over? You go to them with the same anticipation and just say, let me see what God is doing here. And it becomes a tremendous blessing, and it changes the way you approach those things. Then as we fast forward to page 133, he talks to us about the soil of the local church, and I really love some of the images that he uses here. He says this, beginning on page 132, "Our work is not to make a religious establishment succeed, but to nurture the gospel of Jesus Christ into maturity." Please, please listen to that. Our work is not to make a religious establishment succeed, but to nurture the gospel of Jesus Christ into maturity. We're not about the bottom line. We're not about numbers. We're not about all. Everything has its place, I understand. But we're about growing things. We're about growing people into the image of Jesus. We're about perpetuating the gospel of Christ. He says, holiness cannot be imposed. It must grow from the inside. I never know how Christ is going to appear in another person, let alone in a congregation. I must be mindful of the conditions, treating as ever more particular and precious each of these parishioners. True love is always concerned with the particular and not the general, with something rather than somebody, not with anything or anybody. And so, keeping that in mind as we move forward, he says this, and bottom of page 134, carrying over into 135. He said, "But this is the field of pastoral work. Just as it is teeming with energy, nutrients, mixing death and life, I cannot manufacture it, but I can protect it. I can nourish it. I can refrain from polluting or violating it. But mostly like the farmer with his topsoil, I must respect and honor and reverence it, but be in awe before the vast mysteries contained in the unassuming ordinances." So what he's saying is, preacher, when you walk into a local work, or as you are continuing in a local work, you look at it and you think, look at all of the possibilities, all of the things, the life that is teeming here. What do we need to do? Maybe that life is not as active as it could be, but the life is still there. So how do we help the field? How do we nurture and cultivate it? Then he goes on to talk about this. Why do pastors so often treat congregations with impatience and with the impatience and violence of developers building a shopping mall instead of the patient devotion of a farmer cultivating a field? We come in and we want to pound the dirt, pour on the asphalt, beat it into place, and that's how we want church work to go. Instead of understanding you have to treat it like a field. You have to nurture it. You have to help accentuate the life that is there and bring out what is best in it. He says the shopping mall will be abandoned in despair in 50 years. The field will be healthy and productive for another 1,000 if its mysteries are respected by a skilled farmer. Pastors are assigned by the church to care for congregations, not exploit them, to gently cultivate parishes that are plantings of the Lord, not brashly develop religious shopping malls. There's a lot of things that I think we could say, and I'll just mention one. Too many churches are trying to be cool. You can call it whatever you want to. They just want to be cool. They want to be the it place in town. Everybody's coming. We got all this and all that, and it's all about flair and lights and show. We're not building shopping malls and entertainment centers. We're trying to cultivate life, and in so many of those places, they look at it and they say, "But people are here." Yes, and when they walk away hungry. There is nothing for them, and so as we go throughout that process. So when they think about that and they look and they say, people are here, yes, but they leave just as empty as they came because you're not giving anything. You're not cultivating life within them. So he goes on to say this, without the anchoring context of community, pastoral affection for it, and loyalty to it, our proclamation will deteriorate into ranting. Our speech itself depart from the precious I-thou dialogue that is our spiritual glory and degrade into I-it, yelling that turns understanding into resentful bickering. The congregation is not the enemy. Pastoral work is not adversarial. These people in the pews are not aliens to be conquered, defeated, and then rehabilitated to the satisfaction of the pastoral ego. Thomas Merton wrote, "It is both dangerous and easy to hate man as he is because he is not what he ought to be. If we do not first respect what he is, we will never suffer him to become what he ought to be. In our impatience, we will do away with him altogether." And unfortunately, what in some circles passes for gospel preaching isn't really preaching at all. It's ranting. It's getting up and taking out your frustrations on a congregation of people who are simply trying to serve Jesus, and all you're doing is abusing them in the process. It's not only a sad reality, it's a criminal action in the eyes of God. He continues on 136 saying this, the congregation is not stupid and lumpish waiting for pastoral enlightenment. Condescension in pastors is even worse than hostility. You know, the ones that talk down to you, and you're the only one who could ever understand the Bible correctly. There's no way the person in the pew could. Even though we'd never say that, that's deep down how we feel. No, the congregation is topsoil, seething with the energy and organisms that have incredible capacities for assimilating death and participating in resurrection. The only biblical stance is all. When we see what is before us, really before us, pastors take off their shoes before the Shekinah or the glory of the congregation. Every parish is different, even more than each soul is different. For the parish is a compound of souls. What works in that place cannot be imposed on this place. This is a unique place, this people. If I am dismissive of the uniqueness of the parish or unwilling to acknowledge it, I will impose my routines on it for a few seasons, harvest a few souls, then move on to another parish to try my luck there. And in my belligerent folly, I will miss the beauty and holiness and sheer divine life that was all the time there, unseen, unheard, because of my rapacious religious ambitions. And I absolutely love that statement, because so many people, they find something that they think works, and then they want to travel the world telling everybody that they need to do it their way because it works. Each congregation has its own personality, it has its own strengths and weaknesses. And the idea that just because it works in one place, it's going to work everywhere else, it's bad ministry. It's just bad ministry. You can still be faithful to the Lord and execute what He wants you to do, but it takes understanding. Anybody can draw up a model and then try and impose it on people, and when it doesn't work, say, "Oh, well, you just weren't willing participants." That doesn't make you gifted. It doesn't make you special. What true servants of Jesus do is that they look at the people in front of them and that say, here are our strengths, here are our weaknesses. Based on who we are, based upon our community, based upon our community's needs, based upon our church's needs, based upon a host of factors. How do we execute the plan of God here? So I'm not looking for somebody to give me a congregational growth for dummies. Like, okay, here's the plan. Just do it. It works. That's just us wanting an easy way out. And that's just somebody else wanting to perpetuate what they think is a perfect model, and it's not. So we have to be very cautious about that. As we move on to the place and price of the book, of course, I always link up to Amazon just because of the pricing and the speed with which you can receive the book itself. I do not, if you choose to buy the book through the Amazon link, I'm not associated with Amazon. I don't receive anything in return for the recommendations. And so, but there you can find the paperback. It's $20. You can get it on your Kindle for $18. And I think it's worth many times more than that. In its value and what you will learn from it. Buy one for yourself. Try and understand the world of your preacher. If you're a preacher, buy one. Read it. Buy it for your preacher. Buy it for your elders. Buy it for ministry leaders, so that we can all keep this perspective in front of our eyes as we go through these things. Look, we certainly hope that this review has been beneficial to you, and hope that you'll join us next week as we move on to a contemporary book. And we are, again, grateful that you are with us, grateful to be back together thinking about these books. And we want you to always remember that there are many helpful books that man has given to us. There's only one heavenly book that God gave to us. And when we stick with that book, we never go wrong.